Our speaker this morning is a lifelong Republican going all the way back to the Goldwater campaign. He was national chairman of the College Republicans, joined the Army in 1967 and served in Vietnam as an intelligence officer. Later, he served on President Reagan's White House staff. 1994, he was elected chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, and most recently he was chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission, while Texas was leading the nation in job growth and creation. He's a business leader, author, proud father and grandfather, Mr. Tom Pauken, and he's running for governor.
Thank you, David. It's great to be back, and I apologize that I'm going to have to leave at 9, but I've asked to speak at the state convention of the American Legion at 10, so over in Irving, so it's a bit of a drive. But anyway, thanks so much. It's great to see so many old friends that are here, and I think back to when I was party chairman in Rockwall in '94, was still Democrat, and we had these Saturday gatherings, and I came up for quite a few of them, and what a change it's been, and it's great to see a strong Republican Party we have. And I'm also glad to have a chance to, I know we visited by phone to meet your county judge. He was in Vietnam during the tough times during Tet. I was just an oxymoron Army intelligence officer over there in 1969, but I will say that, I think we share a similar experience. I came back from Vietnam, signed my papers to be a civilian at the end of 1969, flew into Oakland from Vietnam, and then on to San Francisco, where I got a rather unpleasant welcome from some of the folks there. Even though I was in civilian clothes, my hair was cut short, as one might expect, and they had figured out pretty quickly, those of us coming from Oakland were definitely returning from Vietnam. But I vowed then that I was going to do what I could to change this mythology and false perception of Vietnam veterans. Was able to do that in the Reagan administration. We put together the Vietnam Veteran Leadership Program, run by Vietnam veterans to help our fellow veterans who were underemployed, unemployed, or had lingering problems with their Vietnam experience. When we started the program, and President Reagan was a great supporter of it, there were a lot of people that wouldn't even put on their resumes that they'd served in Vietnam. By the time we finished, and we sunsetted that program, a rarity for federal programs or state programs for that matter. We sunsetted that program, and by the time we finished, there were a lot of people claiming to have served in Vietnam that never went. So we must have done something right. Anyway, the first thing I did when I came back in and was asked to come back in and chair of the Texas Workforce Commission, I've been in the private sector since leaving the Reagan administration, was set up the Texas Veterans Leadership Program. Because in business in and out of the DFW airport, 2008, I saw these young soldiers, men and women, on their way to Iraq or Afghanistan or coming home, and I thought to myself, look, I appreciate their service, but we need a program run by those who have served in Iraq or Afghanistan to help their fellow veterans make a successful transition. Fortunately, unlike Vietnam, there wasn't a division, there wasn't this tendency to blame the warrior for the war if you had policy differences, but nonetheless, it was important to put that experience to work and help them make a successful transition to civilian life, and I'm proud to say we put that program in place, and it's helped over 11,000 veterans, and it's run entirely by those who served in Iraq or Afghanistan, and by the way, it's going to be sunsetted. As soon as the job is done, it's going to go away. And in addition to seeing Congressman Hull, who's just been such an outstanding leader, and I sure appreciate your service, it's also good to see my friend David Bridges. You know, when I announced the other day, I said, this is a battle for the soul of the Republican Party. It's about a top-down party controlled by big money, Austin insiders, and a few who have the, if you will, the right connections, versus a Reagan-style conservatism, which is grassroots, bottom-up, pulling the social and economic conservatives together, standing for principle, talking about ideas, not just talking points. And somebody said, well, you butted heads with some of the powerful folks, and I said, sometimes you got to tell them no, and sometimes you got to stand for what's right. And I think back to the time I was party chairman, Karl Rove wanted to pick the Court of Appeals judge up here. He had somebody in mind, and it was going to be his selection. Well, the irony is there was a vacancy, and as it turned out, the state party chairman had the opportunity, if he chose to do so, as I did, to say, let the county chairman make that decision, not let Karl Rove make the pick. And so the county chairman made that decision, and they picked a very good man, David Bridges. And I'm proud to see David here, and he's done a great job on the Court of Appeals. But I'm going to stand up for you. I think as I get around this state, I hear people, they're very concerned, if you will, about the future of our nation. Look, I'm older. I'm gray hair. I've had a very good life, but I don't like what's in store for our children and grandchildren unless we do something different. We got to take the fight to the left. I'm tired of us always being on the defensive. I'm tired of, if you will, hearing the talking points and the sound bites. But when you look at what real, authentic conservatism is, it's about sound ideas. It's about sound policies to address the issues facing us. Based on our conservative principles. And I guess what shocked me coming back into Austin, I've been on the National Advisory Council on Vocational Education when I came back from Vietnam, and there was a recognition in the 70s, look, college education's fine for some, vocational education's fine from others, different pathways, kids have different talents and interests. I came back to Austin, and it's not just in Washington, but in Austin, this elitist attitude that everybody's supposed to go to a university. We're neglecting over 50% of the kids who don't go on to college. And I went around the state and I started listening, just like I've been trying to do as a candidate for governor, listen to what people were telling me. And the employers were saying, Tom, we got a shortage of skilled workers. We're neglecting vocational education, almost denigrating it. And this is wrong. We've gotten into this teaching to the test. And, I've got a daughter, Michelle. She loves living here in Rockwall. She teaches at your high school. But she says, Dad, all we're doing, I'm getting these kids, and they've been formed, if you will. I'm trying to teach them critical learning skills, and they've been so programmed, if you will, the TOS and the TOX and now the STAR test. After a while, they say, well, Ms. Pauken, what's going to be on the test, And the problem is this crazy nonsense, a $450 million contract, by the way, to a British company called Pearson. And it isn't working. It isn't good for the kids. It isn't good for our teachers or our educators or our employees. And so I began to work, and I wasn't exactly popular down in Austin, but I helped put a coalition together, and we said we got to go back to more local control of education, a multiple pathway to a high school degree. Let everybody get the foundations, but understand that kids learn differently, have different talents, and let's also start re-emphasizing the importance of vocational education, those students who want to get it. The average age of a welder is 56, 55, of a welder is 55, a plumber 56, a stonemasonry craftsman is 69 years of age. We got a great economic climate, but what happens if we continue to have a shortage of skilled workers? And we as conservatives believe in a hand up, not a handout. But what happens if we're not offering kids a coherent sequence of vocational education courses under this crazy teaching to the test, everybody should go to college system that we've had for about a decade? You wind up seeing kids drop out of schools, go into gangs, or at best get minimum wage jobs. And this is an opportunity to make people proud of themselves, self-sufficient, and earn very good money. People coming out with a welding certificate at the Craft Training Center earn $1,700 a week in the Eagleford Shale. People with 2 years degree, Texas State Technical College, engineering-related technology and instrumentation, start in the petrochemical industry at $68,000. A plumber, by the way, can make $75,000 in 3 years. So we started it with the passage of HB 5, but we've got to have more local control of education, more recognition, if you will, of the importance of vocational and technical education at both the secondary and post-secondary level. One size doesn't fit all, and we've got to end this crazy teaching to the test system and go back to a more common sense approach to accountability at the local level. And let me tell you another issue that's been totally neglected. The sound bites are great. We're all against Obama. We're for the Second Amendment. I'm proud to say I was pro-life before it was fashionable to be pro-life. But at the same time, we're in charge of governance. What are we going to do about this school finance scheme? I date myself when I led the fight against the Robin Hood scheme, which takes local property taxes and ships them elsewhere. I said it was wrong. The local property taxes should stay local. She tried to put it in with the constitutional amendment. We defeated it by 2-1. She got it put in legislatively. 2 governors later, it's still there. It needs to go. Just like what we're doing on the vocational and technical education front, we've got to do on school finance, put a coalition together. Do you know it amounts to $1.1 billion? It's taken from 374 so-called property-rich districts. Woe unto you if you happen to be poor and live in a property-rich district because you're double taxed. But the reality is, it's taken from certain local districts and redistributed elsewhere. It's a wrong way to go about funding education. There are better ways to get the money to property-poor districts. And by the way, what's interesting, there's a real opportunity if you have the will and the leadership to do something about it, to make it happen. Because with all of these energy findings, and we're really the #1 state, along with North Dakota, in drilling in the country, almost 50% of the wells were drilled in the U.S., a lot of those previously property-poor districts down in South Texas are suddenly property-rich, and guess what? Their mindset towards Robin Hood has changed a little bit, so we're going to have some allies in getting rid of it once and for all. But it's got to go, and let's get rid of it. And you know what? I wrote in my book, Bringing America Home, I've been a believer in term limits for a long time, and 2 terms for our state elected officials is enough, in my opinion, in terms of the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and the state officials. It's time to move on after that. I think 2 terms is enough. What happens is I think there's an insulated attitude that develops down in Austin, and I will support that, and not only support it, but I'll live up to term limits myself. But I think we've also got to address other issues that were neglected. You know, I see Janet Napolitano is resigning. I'm one who didn't have a whole lot of... Yeah, but you know, don't clap yet. There may be somebody worse coming along to replace it. But you know what? I've said this myself, you know, I don't have a lot of confidence in Janet Napolitano and Homeland Security protecting our borders. And we got to take care of our own borders. And I've said I'm going to get rid of this slush fund. It's called an emerging technology fund in the governor's office, which picks winners and losers. I was in the venture capital business, and it's difficult enough in the private sector, and I don't like it when Obama does it, and I don't like it when we bailed out the too big to fail financial institutions in 2008, or when Clinton bailed them out with Robert Rubin, and I don't like it when we do it in Texas. It's picking winners and losers in the investment game, and the state shouldn't be in it. And by the way, I don't think the results of those investments are very good. It's been hard to find out exactly where they are, but I've said from day one I'll end it and take that $50 million and apply it to border security and dealing with the drug cartels and the criminal gangs that are in our state. We have responsibility to deal with that, and we will deal with that if I'm elected governor. And I'll put a team of people together, knowledgeable people. You've got knowledgeable people in this room and around the state. It's amazing to me the experience and talent across the state of Texas of people who want to help and address these issues. And with technological developments, it's amazing what you can do with a modest amount of money if you have the will to do so. And we got to get beyond the talking points where a governor or some official goes down to the border and you have a sound bite, and then you go away and nothing gets done. Let's put a team of people with military and civilian experience who understand border security, people with a technological understanding, and it's amazing the technology that's out there that will allow us to address this issue. And people, how do we bring all the resources to bear? And also, how do we deal? We've got to have a sophisticated intelligence operation to deal with the drug cartels and the criminal gangs. I mean, you had a hit in South Lake, not that far from here. But where is the leadership? You know, that's why I say this is a battle for the soul of the party. I mean, we got to go back to solving problems. We're in charge of governance here in Texas. And we got to start putting the left back on the defensive. I'm one who believes, you know, that Texas has got to lead this nation back, but we got to address some issues in Austin. Otherwise, we're going to wake up with a nasty surprise 5 years from now. I was party chairman, and many of you in this room helped elect me back in 1994, and I was the underdog. I was heavily outspent by the big money boys. And you had the top-down approach to the party leadership at the time. That's why I ran. And we won. And we put the social and economic conservatives back together. We were in the minority. My counterpart at that time was Bill White, who later ran for governor. Unfortunately, was not successful. Bill wasn't paying attention. I think while I was taking a vow of involuntary poverty at the time, working on party affairs, Bill was making a lot of money. But he woke up with a nasty surprise when we became the majority party in Texas. But let me tell you, the other side's working hard. I saw what we did in Dallas County to take it from Democrat to Republican, but they've taken it back. They've got Brazos. I mean, they've got Bexar County. They've got Travis County. They've got Dallas County. They're moving on Harris County. And we can't understand, I mean, we can't neglect, if you will, just sort of stand by and say everything's perfect and it's going to be fine. That's what Bill White and the Democrats said back then. We got to take the fight to the left, expose what the Alinsky crowd stands for, expose who these people are, put them on the defensive, take the fight to the left. There are a lot of people out there who just don't understand what these people represent. They don't represent our value system. And we have got to lead the way for this nation to be turned around. Let me, in closing, there's a quote in my book. It really got me involved in politics, and this was back in 1960. And Barry Goldwater had written a book called Conscience of a Conservative. And the words to me, I've got a chapter in the book called A Return to Constitutional Principles. And here's what Barry Goldwater said in 1960, and it's amazing how these words ring so true today. The time will come when we entrust the conduct of our affairs to the men who understand that their first duty as public officials is to divest themselves of the power they've been given. It will come when Americans in hundreds of communities throughout the nation decide to put the men in office who are pledged to enforce the Constitution and restore the Republic. The people are ahead of our career politicians in Austin and elsewhere. The people sense the seriousness of the moment. Let's put this together. Let's rebuild a new conservative majority. Let's take the fight to the left. I ask for your support. I would appreciate it very much. I will do what I say. I've always done it. Sometimes I get in trouble, and sometimes I'm going to be wrong. But I'll try to do what is the right thing, not based on a powerful lobbyist in Austin who has great influence and whispering in somebody's ear, or big money. I mean, big money may be right in some instances, but also it can be wrong. And you've got to be willing to say no and stand up for what's right. I ask for your support to be your next governor in the state of Texas. Thank you very much. I've got a few minutes. I do apologize. I do have to leave at 9. I'd be happy to answer any questions or hear any comments that you might have.
What are we doing about Common Core, C-Scope, and all that?
Okay, Common Core is a good example of what happens when you get away from the principles of local control of education. I mean, I was a critic of No Child Left Behind. I mean, when we were in the Reagan administration, we were trying to undo the Department of Education, return power to the states and local communities. Unfortunately, with No Child Left Behind, the Obama administration has taken it a step further. Common Core is a disaster. Some of the content is absolutely terrible. We don't need it in Texas. It won't be in Texas if I'm governor. And I will also use the bully pulpit to call for sending the power and the money on all of our domestic federal agencies back to the states and the communities with block grant. Let the local people make that determination. C-Scope, I blew the whistle on that 2 years ago when in Marshall, Texas, a fellow Reaganite came up to me, Sam Mosley, and said, "Tom, do you realize what they're teaching in C-Scope? They've got he showed me literally the literature. Democrats represent individual rights. For democracy, the Republicans are like the fascists and the Nazis and the communists." It was unbelievable propaganda, and it needs to go. And I think you get rid of this crazy teaching to the test system, go back to local control, but end C-Scope once and for all. Yes.
Sir, how do we break the Hispanic hold on the Rio Grande Valley by the Democratic Party? You have some ideas on that.
I was dispatched by President Reagan in the White House in 1984 when a group called Valley Interfaith, one of the Saul Alinsky bunch. If you haven't read the book Rules for Radicals, I encourage you to take a look at it, dedicated to the first radical, Saul Alinsky. It's a Bible for the political left in terms of their strategy. And I learned in Vietnam the hard way, you better understand the strategy of the enemy if you're going to defeat it. Valley Interfaith was trying to take over the valley. I went down there. I worked with a lot of the local leaders, most of whom were Hispanic. They generally are pro-life, pro-family, good work ethic, patriotic, high percentage of people who served in the military. And really, their philosophy was akin to ours. So I worked with those people. I pointed out exactly what Valley Interfaith represented, showed their views, which were very radical to the left. And guess what? Ronald Reagan carried the Rio Grande Valley. First time a Republican had ever done that. You got to take the fight to the left, not try to cut deals with guys whose goal is to put you out of business and take control of this state and this nation. And that's the approach I'll take. I was with a group of Hispanic conservatives in San Antonio not too long ago. You got to support your warriors. And there are warriors out there who understand the left. But I hate to say it, our career politicians are not going to defeat the folks that are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week they're like termites eating away at the infrastructure of the foundations of our nation. And that's my frustration. I don't have a lust for power, a lust for office, but I don't want to sit by and see this fall away, even in Texas, that it's gone the other way. And we can win over a lot of the Hispanics. I mean, my wife, we've been married 39 years. She's Mexican-American. I mean, I'm in the community all the time, and guess what? The values are our values. They're not liberals. And we've got to frame the debate the right way. We're always reacting. We're always on the defensive. And we can turn this thing around.
2 more questions.
Okay, I think that's enough. Thank you very much. I really would appreciate your support.
Small token of our appreciation for speaking this morning, our coffee mug there.
All right.
Unless you want this one.
No.
Dalton may attack you for it.
Thanks very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Pauken.
Thank you.
How was that, Jerry?